Welcome everyone to my Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about paints and styles for your car that you can apply. So let's get right to it. So first thing I'm going to cover right now is the basic car paint that literally every car uses. It has a clear coat finish, and in case you don't know how to make it, it's very simple. All you have to do is get a new principled shader. Let's call this paint 1. We have a principled shader. Let's check it out in cycles. This works in EV as well, but I'm going with cycles. Let's wait for Blender to catch up. Alright, I'm going to delete everything. Let's add a plane. Let's add a plane as a floor, and let's add a emission shader for the top. I'm gonna call this M's, because why not? Make it an emission shader, crank it up to 8, and increase the brightness. As you can see, whoa, there we go. We have our car with sufficient lighting, so let's get right to it. First we're gonna do is max out the metallic shader, and it kind of looks a little like some shiny plastic in my opinion. So what you can do from there is just go to your sheen tint, reduce that, and go to your clear coat, make that 2. And that's literally all you need to do. Let's change this color to something like red, and let's increase the roughness to 0.6, and you can already see that it's already looking a lot better. And if you want to add some more details, we can add some anisotropic, depending on how much we want. If I were to do it, I would just do a 0.1 or 0.2, just like that, and add some of that rotation. So you can obviously change the color to black. And this is the first paint that you would use for any car. It's quick, it's simple, it doesn't take much CPU usage, and I would recommend this for any car. But if you want to get something more complex, something a little more unorthodox, we're gonna create a second paint. And this paint is something that you would use if you're really trying to show off. And so let's create a new shader and go to your shading tab. And once you go over here, what first I'm gonna do is find our shaders. You can press Shift A and look for a mix shader. That's good. So we have a principled shader, and we're going to press Shift A and add an emission shader. Connect that, and add a a color ramp. Connect that to your factor. And last but not least, we're going to go to your input section and get the layer weight. And this is important, connect the facing node into the factor. I'm going to turn the lights all the way back down, and once you do that, move the black node and move this white node together closer. And for the principal, let's turn this down to black, and you'll notice that some sections of the car remain to be white. But here's the thing, depending on where you look, the emissions shader shows up. Let me make this gap a little bigger. So as you can see, something's clearly moving, and that's this layer weight node. And so this black section is the principal shader, and the white is the emissions. So we can make this emissions orange, and you get this really cool effect. And in case there's too much orange, you just move the nodes together closer, and you get lesser and lesser of the orange shader. But let's say you don't want an emissions. You can do anything else. You can literally add a glass shader. I think this looks really cool. And let's increase the gap a little bit. As you can see, there is now random bits of glass that will show up depending on which way you look at the car, and that looks really cool. So yeah, and the effect is even greater on Eevee. If we switch to Eevee real quick and enable ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, and motion blur, what you do from there is you go to your shaders and let's swap this glass for the emissions again, because emissions really stands out on this type, and that just looks amazing. You can actually bring it closer together and you get this kind of ghost kind of material, I think. I don't know what to call it. You can make it any color you want. It looks really cool. But obviously we can do much better than this. We can add another layer of complexity. We can add a gradient texture and another color ramp. And we're gonna switch the colors from just green, as you can see, to this gradient. So I was thinking something like white and a teal, and immediately that looks so sick. Problem is the left side is white, the right side is blue. This can easily be solved by clicking on this gradient texture, pressing Ctrl-T for that node wrangler, which you should have enabled in your preferences. Just go to preferences, add-ons, look up node wrangler, and just check that. And press Ctrl-T on the gradient texture and you get this mapping. And with this, we are able to rotate these colors. So right off the bat, I started messing with the rotation. Y doesn't work, so let's try the Z rotation. And this seems to be doing something. So naturally, I would think we should rotate it 90 degrees, and that didn't really seem to work. It just made everything blue. Maybe if I try moving the x-axis, oh, there we go, we're getting something. Yeah. What we did here is the top part's blue and the bottom is white, and we can move this blue shader in the node wrangler down. Or sorry, we can move the blue shader on the color ramp down a little bit, and we get this kind of cool effect. And I think this looks really, really sleek, especially on Eevee. If you go to cycles, it doesn't look as cool, mainly because the bloom and other kinds of Eevee traits make it look really ghost-like and whatever. But if you make this emissions shader disappear, we'll get the same effect. It looks really nice. And that's another paint I was really excited to show you. But let's move to a different paint. We're going to call this Paint 3. And this is not going to be reliant on any kind of location data or anything. Instead, we're just going straight up with a bunch of textures. First up, let's add a bump node. Add that to your normal. Secondly, we're going to add a texture. Let's add a wave texture for now. Take your color and attach it to your height. This is important. Any other tab will not work except for height. And as you can clearly see, we have some stripes that go across, and you could be satisfied with this. Just turn the color down a little bit. Let's make it metallic. Add that clear coat as always. We're already getting that classic car paint kind of look with that shiny, glossy look. But we're not done here. We're going to add another texture, and this is going to be the Musgrave texture. Take this height node to the vector, and boom. You get this really trippy looking material. And we can actually manipulate this a little further. I'll go to the material preview just to show you what this can do. So if we make it smaller, increase the scale on the wave texture. If you want to make it bigger, decrease it. So for example, 0.1 would get you this pretty much nothing. It's just a bunch of waves. 0.2, you can actually start seeing some dunes or some kind of like some crevices, and as you keep going higher and higher, you can see more and more creases. And yeah, changing the rings and bands doesn't really seem to make a difference. But yeah, just keep experimenting. And this saw actually is really cool. So if you switch the, it was originally sine, but if you switch it to saw, you get this kind of outline. It's not as deep. So switching from sine to saw really makes it look different. I like this look a little better. But you can try triangle, and that doesn't really make a difference. So increasing, decreasing scale can really help make your car stand out. But that was only the wave texture. We can start messing with the Musgrave texture as well. And increasing the scale for this basically adds more of those circle kind of designs that you saw. But decreasing the value of the scale obviously removes them. So you can get cool looks like this. Or I can just reduce the scale once more. And there's very occasional lines and crevices that go across the car, which you may or may not like. But obviously we're not done with that. We can do one more thing and go back to our input, but this time choose a wireframe. And adding that to your vector for the Musgrave adds this kind of wireframe looking texture. And the way I got this kind of design was I selected pixel size and I upped the size. And there's one more paint that I would like to look into, and we're going to call this paint 4. And what this is we're going to go crazy on the color ramp, basically. First thing I'm going to do is just add a color ramp. And of course add the color to the base color. And add a gradient texture at first, because we're going to be changing it later on. And what we have here is just a simple black to white, not that complex. But if we change this constant, and we made this, let's say, white, look at that. You can see a clear distinction between the colors from this car. And if you switch this gradient texture to a spherical type, we get some even more interesting looks. So it looks like this. And of course it's not very in scale, so as before we can add our gradient texture. And there we go. As you can see, it's just a sphere, and we were able to rotate it and move it to the front of the car. And we can move the X location as well. Oh, we don't want to actually move that. Try the Y location. No. The Z location maybe? Yes, there we go. And we can have like the top part of the car only. Let's try moving the X location again. And there we go. We have this circle that goes over the top of the car. We can change this to red. And yeah, there we go. And once you do that, we can always add more colors. So why not green? Or, well, blue also looks really nice. For this white, we can replace that with, I don't know, a bluish green, I guess. And as you can see, we have these colors that go over the car. We can also add our metallic and our clear coat, and we get this really nice looking car. Increase the roughness. And yeah, these are just some kind of designs that you can come up with. Moving the node obviously focuses that elsewhere. I don't know if you can reduce or increase the scale. Yes, you can. And you can pretty much just put a circle on top of the car. There we go. Using the y-axis, we were able to stretch it out. Whoa. But yeah, there we go. So there is the other paint type. We're able to use a color ramp and separate each color. And yeah.